Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're listening from, and welcome to the weekend review. It's from Celtic Down Under, hosted this week by Sean and joined by Paul and Anthony, all in Western Australia. Advance warning that if I start freaking out and running about away off camera, then it's because the cockroaches have come back for revenge on their fallen comrades that I just took down 2 minutes ago. These ones have wings and they're like this size, so I can go and get the carcass of the last one that's still under a bowl right now, if anyone doesn't believe me, but I think we'll leave that off. How's your war with the Australian summer going, Paul?
Okay for now. We've had a pretty tame one by Aussie standards. We've barely got above 40 degrees very often, and it looks like we're settling into high 20s and very early 30s for the next few weeks. So suits me. What I'm hoping not for is a late Indian summer heat wave that hits in like 2 weekends time when it's my wedding and I'll be trussed up in a kilt and waistcoat and jacket, so we could happily deal with the high 20s. But if it gets up towards 35, 40, it might be a bit of a hot day. So yeah, well, fingers crossed it stays what it is for now.
Well, the Ningar 6-season calendar would have us still in the hot season for February and March, so
it's possible. It's absolutely possible. I think it was pretty hot last March, so fingers crossed it doesn't get back up to that level.
I do remember that. And Anthony, have you got any grass left in your garden, or is it all dead?
Pretty dead, but I was in Melbourne last week for a wedding, and it was surprisingly 30 degrees in Melbourne, which seems a lot hotter than 30 degrees in Perth. It was very, very muggy, very humid.
Yeah.
We're cutting all sorts of shapes on the dance floor, but enough about that. Yes, but and just to your point there, Paul, I also sweated up when I got married in a kilt, so I can definitely. I'm praying for you that you get a nice temperate 25 degrees, but you know, not
fingers
much
crossed. Yeah, could go either way.
There we go. Yeah.
All right, well, we've got lots to get through. So, as this is our first podcast since last Wednesday, nobody's actually talked about the league game against Hearts. So, we at Celtic Park last Wednesday or /Thursday for everyone down here had a home game against Hearts of Midlothian, and we went down 1-0. And ultimately, it was a terrible night for us as we lost ground in the title race, thanks to our city neighbours winning 4-1. So that gap that Michael Beale was talking about, they closed it on Wednesday night, just slightly. But despite going 1-0 down to what is actually, do you know what? Paul, was it offside? I mean, the VAR graphic was...
It was confusing to say the least, wasn't it? So I think... So let's start with the colour coding of the VAR system in Scotland, which is dark blue and green. I've not really noticed this up until now, but apparently, because we've not really had a dark blue and a green team playing at the same time, but apparently the dark blue line is always the defensive line and the green line is always the attacking line. However, when you've got Hearts playing in dark blue and black and we're playing in green as usual, it gets a bit confusing when the green line is... the furthest away from the goal, and that looks like it's offside, and the blue line is the to match Hearts, when later on we find out that's not the case. So thanks to Celtic TV actually for a bit of insight. It's rare that you get that, but in this occasion we did get that. And look, it's really, really marginal. I've heard there's been a lot discussed on it over the course of the week. I've had a few different opinions. The one that we got at the time was obviously probably Starfelt's big toe was marginally playing him offside, playing him onside versus Giannelli's knee. Since then, I've heard commentary that says if their lines are basically the same as back to the original of benefit of doubt to the striker. So I think you've got to go with the tech and assume that whoever's using the tech is competent, which might be a bit of a stretch occasionally in Scotland. But if we assume that, then I think you go, it was really marginal, and maybe that Starfelt's toe is playing him on. I think what you can say is we get sprung down their left, our right. Ralston's cut out of position. Look, as our fullbacks often are. Halliday's had no pressure on him. He's delivered a cracking ball in, and let's be honest, it's a pretty good finish. So yeah, let's there's plenty of other VAR controversy as usual. So let's give them the benefit of the doubt in this one and say it's a pretty blue and green decision, and they've used the tech and they've used it right. But yeah, look, it's a bit of a shock for us to go down at home, but I thought the reaction was very good.
Yeah, and sorry, Paul, just try to cut you off there because we've got another game to get through as well. But yeah, we had other talking points from that night. So we did go 1-0 down to what was a blurry line, let's just call it that. But then we had the linesman flags offside against Kyogo when he's about 2 or 3 yards onside. But thanks to the new VAR rules, it's allowed to play on, and Maeda slides in, scores a goal, gets injured subsequently, and that's him out for the weekend game. And then in the second half, we get a Jota turnover from a great tackle, and again, Kyogo gets played in on the counter, and we go 2-1 up. And then later on, Haksabanovic, beautiful goal. Overall, when you look at the stats, we had 3 shots on target and scored 3 goals. Kyogo gets man of the match, and overall it was a really clinical night and not particularly reflective of the weekend. Did you agree that Kyogo was man of the match, Anthony, or did you just for the pure clinical nature of the night?
Yeah, I mean, Ange made 4 changes, which I thought, well, on one hand's a bit surprising, but then you kind of thought Hearts were going to make changes, and they made changes as well. Probably a bit slow to get started with our 2 fullbacks, not having played for a while. So Bernabé was out with a bit of paternity leave. He saw the birth of his daughter last weekend, the weekend before. And then Ralston's first game back from injury for quite some time. So I felt they took about 20 minutes to get going. But when they did, I thought we clicked into gear. We got the equaliser, which was a really good goal. Ralston down the line, and Kyogo turning assist for Maeda. I thought Maeda was playing really well. It's a shame he got, he carted off injured. But then that brought Jota on, and we sort of ground them down and ground them out the game. Kyogo man of the match, an assist and a goal, 3-0 win. Took his chance. I think that's fair, and he did really well with that chance. Mooy again, we bit of class, sort of slipped him in, sort of thing. So I don't have any sort of problems with that, and I think that's probably Andy Halliday's only contribution against Celtic in the last 5 years, I think, as far as I can remember, if it's not like putting a 2-footed lunging tackling against one of our players. So credit where it's due, I guess.
He does, and the hypocrisy was something that I'll just touch on in a second, but obviously the league is the main event for us, and that was 26th win out of 28 league games, which is massive, incredible. And we've got 10 games left with Hibs at Celtic Park next. But what was interesting, I thought when I looked at the stats, the fixtures, was that we've only got one more midweek game this season, and that'll be in the 24th of May. So that was essentially the penultimate midweek game for us between now and when the season ends at the end of May or start of June, if we make it to the cup final. But yeah, Robbie Nielson came out after the game and he starts moaning about the fairly innocuous Bernabé challenge. It was arguably a yellow card. It was never, ever, ever a red card. Anyone that thinks that's a red card does not understand the rules of the game. And I'm pretty sure Robbie Nielson has got his comments pre-planned before the match about the decapitation and try to be sensationalist. And I think he's pre-planned it to try and manipulate the officials for the Saturday game. And Bernabé kind of had an overall good game. Paul, what did you reckon? Nielson, is it pure manipulation? Do you think he had a point? What was Bernabé's overall performance? Because he's been getting a bit from the Celtic fans, and I don't know if it's fair.
Yeah, no. I'll briefly touch on Nielson. They were trying to influence VAR all night. They had their little laptop, their little tablet on their tripod, and they were encouraging players to get in amongst it. There was nothing in it. It's a yellow. Ref missed it. You can't give a yellow in VAR, so there's nothing more in it than that. So let's move on. Yeah, if he's up to mind games, he's not really up to Fergie's class, is he? And he can try all he wants on mind games, but when you get blown away the following game, then any manipulations kind of pissing in the wind a little bit. Bernabé is an interesting one, and it's one I've been pretty vocal on Twitter since that game. I thought he played his best game for us. Yes, he wasn't perfect. To Anthony's point, obviously he's back from a decent bit of time out. There was some speculation as to why he was out of the squad. Obviously, having a young baby is one of the reasons. The other reason is just I think that we're so strong on that bench. Is do you need 2 fullbacks potentially in the squad? Probably not if it's on the bench. So I thought he had a really good game. Yes, his distribution was a bit loose particularly in the first half, comparative to the second, but he wasn't alone in that. We were a bit disjointed first half with the changes, as Anthony said, 4 changes. I thought he put himself about. He defended the best I've seen him defend, which is one of his major criticisms. I think everybody acknowledges he's great going forward. He won headers for a guy as short as he is. He got back in timed blocks. He put himself about. Yes, he was sometimes cut out of position, but that's the nature of how we play our fullbacks. Even JT gets cut out of position, as does Johnston and Juranovic before him. So I thought he had a really good game. Obviously, he got assist near the end. He should have had another assist when he pulled it across, and there was, we fluffed a chance at the back post. So yeah, I was pretty impressed with him. Obviously he's not going to be moving GT from the team anytime soon, but I thought it was a pretty competent fill in, and I think it should have put some of the doubters in their place. According to Twitter, it hasn't. I think people would argue white is black if that's the position they've already taken. I saw lots of comments saying he'd had an absolute shocker, which I think, even if we apply your levels of Starfelt to that, Sean, I think that's unfair. I thought he had a pretty sound game, and he grew into it, and he particularly good for going forward, as we know he can do.
Cool. I'll just jump to some comments to get the listeners involved. When I mentioned earlier, some time zones, we've had Paddy saying good afternoon from Ireland, best wishes, and Alexander in Edinburgh saying hello, and Monty, not sure where Monty's from, but he's saying good afternoon as well, so I'm guessing he's a similar time zone. Mahesh is jumping on your point about the Hawkeye, Paul. It's accurate to 3 millimeters, but as he's also mentioned, the rendering of the lines on the low resolution cameras and with pretty bad angles as well makes it look really difficult to say it is offside or onside. It really reminds me of the one where Kyogo where Crawford Allen came out after when Robbie Nielson was moaning another time about Kyogo being allegedly offside. So just while we're on the point about Robbie Nielson, there was for me 3 things during the game that I thought we were so dominant from start to finish that you could argue that it really made no difference. But I thought there was 3 kind of points to highlight for the officials on Saturday. One was the tackle from behind in the first 5 minutes on Alastair Johnston, which could have been a red, but was not even given a yellow. No VAR review. There was no VAR review for the foul on Alastair Johnston. What I think, and hopefully you agree, Anthony, was a clear penalty. Or the one that hit Joe Hart on the head when they follow through from when he saved the shot from what was, as far as I can tell, Hart's only chance of the game, and statistically was their only shot on target. Also, there was an object thrown at Hart, but obviously nothing much the officials can do about that. So that one we're kind of looking at what the SFA are going to be doing. So refereeing on Saturday, Anthony, what do you reckon?
Just to back to the game midweek, Robbie Nielson spent more time talking to the 4th official than he did talking to his own players. Like every time they cut to the sideline, he's chatting away at the 4th official. What could you possibly be talking to him about the whole entire game? I just sort of get it. Anyway, so that was the one observation that I made from the midweek game. As for the weekends, I think the only controversial one there that really sticks in my mind is not controversial, but the one I think should have been a penalty was the Halliday challenge on AJ. He's delivered the cross and then he's just taking his legs away and he didn't touch the ball. He wasn't even near the ball. Scissor kicked him, took him down inside the box as far as I can see. And no VAR review. Michael Stewart is going, oh no, he's played the ball, so therefore that's not had any impact on the play. And it's like, well, since when's that the definition of a foul? If you take someone out, you take someone out. It doesn't matter whether he's already played the ball or not. That was a ludicrous explanation. Usually I agree with Mikey Stewart, but he was way off the mark with that one. But not to even review it. The cameras didn't really show you much of a replay of it either. I was just like, well, come on. That's a major incident in the game. So I don't know. It kind of felt like it was swept under the rug a bit. The Joe Hart one, I think Hill's got every right to go for the ball. The ball was loose. It was there to be won. Free kick, maybe, but I don't. Joe Hart was, keepers tend to be a wee bit sort of protective of themselves when they go in those sorts of situations. It was a great double save. He did remarkably well to parry it, but then to have the awareness to tuck it away for a corner. But I think in fairness, the Hearts players have every right to go for that ball when it's bouncing around in the box. So yeah, that's my take on those two. I don't recall the first one, so I can't comment on that one. But I definitely feel that Halliday got away with one for that tackle.
Yeah, and yeah, as you say, it's not really about the ball; it's about the tackle, isn't it? And Michael Stewart does tend to call it fair, apart from when it's Hearts involved. There was a stat from the game that Hearts had 9 fouls, 3 yellow cards. Celtic had 5 fouls and 1 yellow card. This is an unusual trend because usually Celtic are the hard pressing team and the other teams are just kind of sat back. So the last couple of Hearts games, St Mirren game, it's been actually the opposition have had more fouls than Celtic, and it's a bit of a. It's like teams have realised that if they just sit back, they're going to get opened up at some point anyway. So they're actually having a go now, which is good. It's entertaining, but that is a bit of a turnaround because normally you don't see that sort of thing. But to focus on positives from here on, I think Celtic absolutely started on fire. We score within 2 minutes, like within 100 seconds, something like that. And the commentator says that goal was coming, which is when you're 100 seconds into the game, that says something. We were 64% possession overall. That was actually less than we had midweek when we had 71%. But it was pretty much the exact same as we had when we won 4-3 at Tynecastle before. And the last comparison is when we last lost the game at Tynecastle, like a year and a half ago. Whenever it was, we actually had 73% that day. But overall, we weren't as prolific. Xander Clark actually kept the score down. We had 9 shots on target from 20 total shots, and we only got 3 goals, whereas midweek we were 3 for 3. Hearts, according to stats, had 11 shots, but only 1 on target. So really, we were pretty dominant. Paul, was it the start that really killed Hearts, that really broke them, or was it just us being consistent throughout? Were the players more up for the cup, or was it just sometimes a game plan clicks?
Oh, look, I think we always try and go for a real fast start, but we were absolutely on fire early on, and they had no answer. I think commentator was spot on. Hatate had a good strike that was just a good save. We'd had pressure in the box even before that, so I think it was like our 3rd visit to the box by the time we scored, and it was, like you say, 100 seconds. So that's a pretty fast start by anyone's standards. Jota just looked in the mood from the very first second and didn't really let up on them. And yeah, once we get our noses in front, we put them in a pretty difficult position. They did same as Wednesday. They did try and press, but I think they got their team selection wrong, to be honest. The fact that Cammy Devlin was left out when he's like their principal pest and general antagonist, and his pretty much his sole job is to break up play. And when you're playing a side like us, when we're on fire, you need somebody to go and put themselves about and try and break up that play. We had so much space down both wings. But if you've got space down the wings, you expect the midfield to be clogged. It wasn't. You could have driven a bus through the middle of that midfield at times. I don't know what their midfield was doing, but it was posted missing for a good chunk of that first 15, 20 minutes. And obviously in the second half, it just sort of faded away again. But look, they did rally, which, if we'd got that second goal in that first 15, 20 minutes, then I think, the game would have been over much more quickly. But they did rally and they put us under some pressure. And yeah, we weathered that, and I guess the peak of that was the Hart double save, which absolutely brilliant. So yeah, once we weathered that storm, then yeah, we took back control of the game, and it was about as comfortable as you could have expected it to be at Tynecastle. To be honest, I think we were all expecting a bigger challenge than Wednesday night, and actually as it went, it was a lot easier.
Yeah, my bet on my coupon was relying on Hearts to score a goal, which they tend to do against us, but they didn't this time. So you are right in terms of scoreline, in terms of pretty much everything. And Robbie Nielson, his excuses after the match were not related to officials this time. One, it was related to players not being available, players playing out of position, and bad timing was what he said for the Celtic second goal. And yeah, I don't know how that's an excuse. I don't know how it excuses them, but that's what he was coming up with anyway. He was saying he had Barry Mackay playing out of position, trying to do a job that he's not familiar with. Well, that was your call, man. You did it.
Yeah, he could have picked Forrest again like he did on Wednesday. I thought he put himself about pretty well, and he tried to link the play. So I don't really see that. Nielson's got like a huge book of excuses that it's anyone's fault except for him, to be honest. So
yeah. I'm going to actually open this one up to you, Anthony. Have your pick of players. Who would you like to get on your soapbox and praise or not at the moment?
Well, just a couple of quick points. I think we did the hard work on Wednesday night. So I actually think we drove them out of the ground on Wednesday night. And that's why we got a fast start against them on the Saturday. So I don't think they could bounce back 3 days later and put up another performance. Celtic Park, they tried to waste time. They fell over. They just tried to drag the game out as much as possible. So they were blown out their backsides then. Fast forward 3 days. We start how we do. 3 chances in the space of 100 seconds, get our goal, and then we get the killer right before halftime. Literally, and that was some bit of play. The cross was just was perfectly weighted from AJ and Kyogo with, I think we've got written down here, a Dembele-esque finish, which I would agree with. And just took 3 Hearts defenders out the game. We won, finish, and they all just stand looking at each other, just going, "Oh no, here we go." And I suppose from Robbie Nielson's point of view, he's probably got a team talk in his head, "Oh, we're only 1-0 down, lads. We're still in this." And all of a sudden, he's 2-0 down, and his game plan's pretty much shot to pieces. And they didn't really, I don't feel they laid a glove on us in the second half at all. And I'll tell you what, if I was a Hearts supporter, I'd be raging because, a cup game, there's nothing to lose. And they just sat in and just hoped for the best, basically. And it was just, Ginelli's up front by himself. You're thinking, put an extra forward on, push forward, try something different. But they just sat in and they deserved everything they got. And if we'd have run away 4 or 5-0, I'd just been like, well, that's what you deserved. I thought AJ had a really good game. I thought he's movement, he's crossing, he's overlapping, he's adding that to his game every week. He's absolutely rock solid, and he's very, very strong defensively. So I think we've really replaced Juranovic there. I'd say Haskabanovic was probably a wee bit of a disappointment. Obviously getting his first start in a long time, and I guess he's a victim of Jota starting the game really, really well, because that first half an hour, the ball went down that right flank pretty much all the time. Like, apart from the actual initial start for that first 60 seconds, 90 seconds, the rest of the play for the first half an hour all went down the right-hand side. And you could say the same for Abada on Wednesday night. Maeda started like a house on fire down the left, and Abada was really not really in it. So there is that cautionary tale of, like, you come off the bench and you look an absolute world beater, but when they're getting handed the start, they're maybe not quite grasping it. And is that because they're playing against fresh legs at the start of a game, or a bit of nerves? I don't know, but I just kind of feel they both maybe missed the mark just a touch, if I'm being super critical. But Maeda definitely first half an hour on Wednesday night, and Jota played really, really well on Saturday.
When I think about Haksabanovic and some of the best games he's played, and I'm thinking back now, was one against, maybe even 2 against Dundee United, and in those games he was playing on the right. So I don't know if being on the left is kind of doing a disservice to the way his style of play. But that said,
he cut in for that goal though, and that he cut on his right peg for that, and that was sublime. And let's not gloss over that. That was actually that's a really good goal, and that's like a nice sealer 3-1. Like, that's puts icing on the cake and just kills the tie, like the midweek game. So he definitely deserved the start. I'm not disputing that. And same with Abada. He was phenomenal when he came off the bench against St Mirren the week before. So they both deserve the starts, but I just don't feel they kind of grabbed it with both hands, sort of thing. They sort of,
Not dissimilar to Dave Turnbull when he got his start a few weeks back. That he didn't really live up to the billing either. And there's probably 2 things there. There's a bit of unfortunateness that all the play came down the opposite side from where those guys were, and a bit of they may be more devastating when a team is tiring and we're still fresh.
Yeah, it's curious how well these players are doing coming off the bench, and then when they get rewarded with the start, they're not grasping that opportunity. I think maybe the only one that would be the exception to that kind of general statement recently would be Matt O'Reilly, who has looked good coming off the bench and when he started he's looked pretty solid in all games recently. But the reason Matt O'Reilly's not on the team is just because Adam Mooy has just been sensational. And look, that's him scored. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but I looked it up and I think it's right. It's 7 goals since the World Cup he scored, having scored none before that. So he had a couple. I think that's right. Maybe somebody can verify while I'm waxing lyrical about him. But yeah, he scores that opening goal with his left foot. And the funniest thing for me was when he's doing his celebration, and then at one point, and amongst the crowd, he looks straight down the camera, and then you see his face just drop. And I'm like, that is the look of a dread in a man who does not want to do a post-match interview. Like, you just see it in his face when he makes eye contact with the camera. But I thought he was really good throughout. Callum McGregor said post-match he singled out Mooy and Hitati for praise specifically, saying that those two are getting in all the right positions, getting close to each other, always offering. What Paul, what do you make of Adam Mooy's contribution on Saturday in the context of his 7 goals and strong performance in the second half of the season?
Yeah, look, I think he's just got stronger and stronger since the World Cup, right? So he went to the World Cup. He contributed well to an Australian team, obviously punching above their weight, and he's come back just a bit like Meira actually, and they've both just been flying since they got those positive experiences in Qatar. I love watching him play. He just seems like he's got so much time because he isn't. We know he's not the quickest with his feet, but he's miles ahead of most players up top, and that extra awareness just means he buys himself time. He always looks like he's got space. He creates space. He shifts the ball between his feet really well, and he does the simple things really, really well. He picks players out. He already on the move, and he just links the play really well. His weight of pass is phenomenal. And even though he doesn't move that quickly, he is in perpetual motion. So he's very hard to pick up. He drops between the lines. And I just think he's gone from strength to strength. And look, we are lucky all, down here in Australia, we've probably long known the benefits of Aaron Mooy, and we were all probably pretty confident that he would be a decent signing. But I think, I don't know, I would say he surpassed even my expectations. I saw him as a sort of, somebody would be rotated and help the squad during the busy periods, but I didn't really expect him to kick on and be an absolute, basically an undroppable part of the midfield with the strength that was particularly already in there. So yeah, he's been a phenomenal signing, and and the stuff that he's come out and said over the last few days about what it's like to play in that team, it just again illustrates how strong a group we've got in terms of the team ethic.
Yeah, when he was first playing in that number 6 role, when he was trying to get up to speed, and the boys in Axon were asking me, like, "Oh, yeah, is this what Adam Mooy's always like for Australia?" And I'm like, "No." To be honest, like, I don't know if this is just because of age. Like, he was previously like a number 8 that would break into the box on the kind of right attacking mid area, and now he's doing that. So he was not doing that before the World Cup, and now he is. He's now becoming the player that he was before and did it for Celtic. Anthony, are you on the Mooy bus? Is it too late to get player of the year?
Probably, but he's popping up with goals, which is brilliant. So if your midfielders, central midfielders are popping up with goals, that's always a bonus. But he's popping up with an assist every game as well. So he teed up Kyogo during the week, and then he got an assist, obviously, against the Hearts on the weekend. He sort of played it to AJ, never look away pass, and that's what started the move for the back heel for the second goal. So he's added goals to his game, and he's keeping Matt O'Reilly out of the team. And if you said that 6 months ago, 12 months ago, you'd have laughed and said, "No way, Matt O'Reilly's a really good player," but he's keeping them out of the team. Midweek they obviously played 2 of them and rested Hitati, which was fine. That worked okay at Celtic Park. But he's just he's obviously enjoying his football, and I find in anything in life, when you're enjoying it, you tend to put your best performances out in the park. So I think he's got a year's extension on his contract that Celtic can activate. So I expect we'll be activating that, because you definitely want him around your squad for next year, because if he's contributing the way he's contributing, you keep playing him. As simple as that.
I'm sure he signed on a 2-year, so I'm pretty sure he's here next year anyway. Mahesh is saying Mooy looking faster and more mobile due to Celtic's training regime? Probably. And I think he's more motivated for some whatever reason either. There's been some post-match comments as well. I just want to grab another... hold on, before I move on. Go on yourself. Mooy is daddy cool. He will be here a way bit longer. He is 31 now, but we have had players like Lubo that play that kind of style into their mid-30s. So he's definitely not done yet, let's be honest.
His finish was absolutely class as well. I think like we kind of glossed over that. Like the technique to hit that at the pace it's fizzed in and control it and steer it in, it's a really class finish. Really class finish.
Yeah, agreed. Left foot. I'm just going to grab a comment that Mahesh has made here as a link to a different topic. Okay. So he's got to laugh. Ange said post-match after the league game midweek that they didn't find Kyogo enough. And what happens? Every man and a dog trying to hit Kyogo with poor long balls in the first half. I did kind of notice that, but then I also noticed it was kind of working in the second half, did the same thing. So not sure what to make of that. But the kind of headline there is that Kyogo is now on 26 goals for the season after scoring one midweek and one on Saturday. And going to say with the striker bias, he's probably well up there, if not in the lead, for a Player of the Year candidate. But I want to talk about another person who I want to put forward as a Player of the Year candidate, and that is the 20th player to score for Celtic this season. So who was it scored last week to be the 19th player? I can't remember now. Johnston, Alastair Johnston. So we've now got the 20th player to score, and that was Cameron Carter-Vickers, who scored the final goal of the game. And Ange Postecoglou had his post-match. I don't know which media outlet it was with, but the interviewer suggested Carter-Vickers goes under the radar, and Postecoglou basically laughed at him and said, no, he's the best defender in Scotland, and if you want to say otherwise, then I've got a case to make against you. So Carter-Vickers' contribution on Saturday, Paul, and do you think he is the best player in Scotland, or do you just agree with Postecoglou that he's simply the best defender in Scotland?
Well, he's making a case for best player, isn't he? Look, he's absolute class. Like we touch on this so often, but I think it's a badly worded question by the interviewer. But I think what he's basically suggesting is what we've kind of touched on here over the last few weeks is you never really get a bad performance for him. He never dips below an 8 out of 10. He's quite regularly a 9 or even a 10 out of 10. Like he was. I think he got man of the match on Saturday, and I don't think you could argue with that. He was imperious at the back, and then obviously it was his run that won the free kick. And then he a great delivery from O'Reilly, absolutely perfect. Although I don't know why you give a unit as big as CCV. I don't know how you miss him, but Civic allows him just to run right past him and nod it into the net. It's about as easy a goal as he could hope for his first of the season. But yeah, look, he's got that in his locker. He's not scored loads of goals, but he is a threat in the box. I think that comes down to more about our delivery into the box being, I don't know. I'm sure we spend lots of time on set pieces, and they've infinitely improved from years gone by, where we think all remember berating the fact that we would never score from a set piece. It was just, a thing that Celtic, even in their best times under Rodgers and others, we just didn't score from set pieces. So we've certainly added more of that to our game. But yeah, he shrugs players off. He's probably not the quickest, but again, he reads the game so well. His passing between the lines is really good for one of the centre backs. Although I don't know if we've got time to touch on this, but Kobayashi was very impressive when he came on second half, and it was a decent cameo. So we won't steal a thunder on that. But yeah, he's pretty much got it all. I'm absolutely confused as to how he was deemed surplus to requirements at Spurs when you look how bad they are. But their loss is our gain, and I think. The danger, there's already speculation that Premier League teams will come in for him, but I think given how long he bounced around loans for, you'd like to think that having found a home that, it's going as well as it is for him. And he's not super young. I think he's 25 or 26. So he hopefully realised that, what he's got and hopefully stick around for at least the rest of the Ange project. I guess the concern is whenever the Anges decide to move on, we maybe lose a few more of the players that he's sort of built the team around. So, but that's obviously a nice problem to have for another day. Hopefully it's not for a long time.
I think a lot of the bias against him in the EPL in particular is due to the fact he's 6'0". And I was going to say only, but I'm also 6'0", so I don't want to put myself down. But he's probably got 25 kilos on me. And Anthony, what is a ball player, like with that low center of gravity, with that strength? Like, how much is he contributing ball on the ground as well?
Yeah, well, I mean, the now infamous meme of Ange pulling the face at Carter Vickers at New Douglas Park, going like, "What was that?" sort of thing. So that is now a meme for the ages, and that will be that will just be that you'll see that on the internet for the rest of time now. But most of the time, he finds feet. And the one thing I've noticed since he's come back from the World Cup is that he is carrying the ball forwards more. Before the World Cup, he was more inclined just to lay it off, pass it side to side to the fullbacks. Since he's come back from the World Cup, he's galloping forwards and he's actually breaking the lines himself and causing overloads in certain situations. And as Paul rightly pointed out, it was him that drew the foul for the free kick, so he scored his goal. It's hard to, I was on 2 weeks ago, I was talking how great Carter Vickers is. He's just rock solid. I mean, you saw what Celtic were like when he was injured and were playing those games when he was missing. It was just, everything just felt shakier. Joe Hart was shakier. Everything just wasn't quite as solid. So, as long as he is there and he's fit and he's playing, then you put Carter Vickers plus one other and you've got a solid backline, regardless of whether you're changing the fullbacks or not. And I think it's probably right to now talk about Starfelt. Apparently, he felt something in the warm-up for the game on Saturday. He got a rub down and played the first half, and then I think they just took the precaution and said, we're 2-0 up, put Koibashi in, and I think he played really well, didn't put a foot wrong. To be fair, he wasn't under immense pressure because they were only really playing with Ginelli up front. But the one thing I did notice, and this will talk to you, Sean, is that when he got the ball on his left foot, it all just looked very seamless. It was like, pass the ball out. It was, there was none of this cumbersome take a touch, get it under control sort of thing that Starfelt sometimes does. But yeah, I think, it'll be interesting in the summer, and I think this will be a discussion that we'll have in the off season is, who's fighting for that second defender's position, because if CCV's fit and he's there, he's starting. So it's like, well, who's going to duke it out for that second spot? So I think that will be interesting, and that's something to look forward to in a good way. But you're just hoping that we keep those three centre halves available for next season, because you want to kind of build on things. We want to do something in Europe. You need a solid backline. You need understanding. So you really don't want to lose one of those three players this summer if you can help it, unless it's a stupid bid. If somebody comes in and gives you funny money, then you take it and all right, you go, yep, all right, we'll spend that money and we'll get someone else. But realistically, if we want to really give ourselves every opportunity to do well next year in Europe, we need to keep those three centre halves fit and available.
Who's number? Well, I probably projecting too far ahead for what is the weekend review, but we do need to think about who the fourth player is, since it's less obvious now that Jens is gone. I guess at the moment it's Welsh.
It's Welsh at the moment. Yeah, it's Welsh. I mean, whether Welsh moves on in the summer and we bring in someone else, or we look at one of the younger players, a Lowe or a Dane Murray, something like that, possibly. But interesting, you should mention your man. You just mentioned him. Mental blank.
Jens.
Jens. Sorry, yeah, he's cutting it up for Schalke by all accounts. Like they've gone on some massive run. Like they've had a great run of results since he started playing for them. They're absolutely raving about him. So maybe we did miss a trick there, but I guess
he did that for us in our first half a dozen games as well, and then he disappeared. So I'm not gonna say that we missed out on that one unless he keeps going with it. On the Starfelt injury as well, it wasn't just that, so it wasn't precautionary, and what I said was it wasn't just precautionary, it was because they could also tell he wasn't moving well. So it was allegedly noticeable. But with a whole week to go until the Hibs game, they might give him a chance to recover. But otherwise, I'd be expecting, if there's anything lingering, a home game against Hibs is probably, and then an international break after that. because that way Starfelt won't be going off in international duty if he's out injured. So I could see Kobayashi being getting a start against Hibs for that. I was impressed though with his composure. Paul, did you like the look of him?
I did. I liked the look of him last time we saw him, and those times when he has played. But like I think it was quite some time ago, he played his first game, and he looked pretty. He looked really quite comfortable. But even more so this time, and as Anthony says, it's fair enough. We weren't under a massive amount of pressure. What I did like is he read the game very well. He stepped in and made interceptions. I don't imagine he's a like-for-like replacement for Starfelt. Starfelt's a classic stopper. He's blood and thunder, and he's puts his body on the line all over the place. Kobayashi looks much more like a cultured, it's almost an old-fashioned sweeper style of centre-back, where he sort of reads the game and steps up and intercepts, and he's not going to, I don't think you're going to see him lunging into too many challenges, but he looked very comfortable on the ball. His passing was good. He was composed. Even when he came under a little bit of pressure, he just a couple of times just step past players where, you think, well, it's a cup tie. Yes, we're 2-0 up, but you'd think, a bit of pressure, he might sort of get a bit flustered. He just waltzed past players and strolled into the midfield and passed it. And honestly, he could have been playing in slippers and a cigar. It was that comfortable for him back there. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think there's lots to be optimistic about with him. It's very early days. Time will tell. I think Starfelt's still very much got the jersey, but he looks another, great bit of business, and I'm optimistic for where that might go over the next 6 to 12 months.
And look, he's another one that's been linked with our move away through our unofficial agent, Fabrizio Romano, mentioning it. So every time he links someone away, they're gone within 6 months. So I'd say
Starfelt, you mean, yeah?
Yes, sorry, Starfelt, yeah, not Kobayashi. So Starfelt, yeah. So I could see him being away. On the other subjects, we kind of talked. I'll just bring up Mahesh's comment actually before I move on. Jens played poorly in Champions League, and I think he played every Champions League game, and so that might have been what broke him. Being up against Real Madrid and the likes, never really recovered from that, and he won't necessarily be doing that anytime soon for the likes of Schalke. Gone yourselves got a comment earlier. Hatate is one of the best players in Scotland, and I think they are preparing Iwata if we lose Hatate in the summer. Hatate was 2 magnificent saves away from getting a double at the weekend, and the narrative of the game very much changes at that point. So we talked about Kyogo and his 26 goals. We talked about Carter Vickers and his just obvious class and how he's just better than anyone else in Scotland. But apart from a dip in form at one point, what's the shout for Hatate for his season as a player of the year? Anthony?
I think he's in the mix. It's just hard. I mean, how you judge? What do you judge it on? Like, you judge it on just goals, assists, like actual performances. I mean, Cal McGregor's up there as well, Mr. Consistent. Carter Vickers is consistent, and then you've got the likes of Kyogo, who we should theoretically end close to on nearly 40 goals if everything goes according to plan for the rest of the season. So yeah, it's stiff competition, but it's going to be a Celtic player. that much I know. I had Hatate to be my player of the year at the start of the season. I thought he was going to be the one. I maybe said this in one of the previous podcasts, but definitely could see it. And he's another one that started adding goals to his game as well. And you're absolutely right. Your goalie pulled an excellent save in the first 60 seconds, because that was going at a rate of knots. That just stung the old palms of the hands, and then he was in again. He could maybe have scored again a bit later on. So yeah, I definitely. But I think we shouldn't really gloss over the fact that this week was a potential banana skin for Celtic. Playing Hearts twice, the third in the league, playing them twice. Charlie Nicholas had them as the biggest contest for us, going for a treble. And we've swept them aside 3-1 and 3-0, and really quite comfortably, really. I mean, all right, we were 1-0 down for 20-odd minutes at home, but apart from that, it was pretty plain sailing. So, I mean, John Hartson made a comment saying that, is the league strong enough if that's the third best team in Scotland, and we've scalped them twice in 3 days? And, Big John comes away with some big statements, but, has he got a point? We've got 2 championship teams that are going to end up in the semi-final of the Scottish Cup. So what does that say to your Aberdeens, Hibs, Hearts, the rest of the teams in the Premiership? I mean, where are they? Why are they not in the semi-final?
The last quarter final. I was going to say final quarter final. That's a weird way to say it. The fourth quarter final will be played tonight. Thanks to the TV, it's spread over 4 days, which is interesting. You guys can comment on that if you feel how you feel about it. I think it's just annoying for people in Australia when you have more night games, because that becomes morning games for us. But yeah, Falkirk or Ayr will be joining the cup draw tonight. Falkirk are a League One team. Their manager has got manager of the month the last 2 months for that particular division, so they're not any mugs. And Ayr were challenging earlier in the season for promotion, but they have dropped off recently, so also not too bad. But Cali Thistle, who got into the 5th round on a bye, on a default because of Queen's Park's expulsion, or in the semis, and Sevco are the other team. So I'm going to say, who do we want? But what I really mean by that is, do we want Sevco at this stage, or do we want a lower league team in the semi-final? Because I'm pretty sure that Viaplay are going to be freezing at least one of those balls before the draw and getting instructions to Rod Stewart or whoever it is to try and get a Celtic Sevco Cup final. Paul, what do you want?
Well, let's be honest, it's not going to be Rod Stewart, is it? He's never going to get invited back after that time, which was
he's in Perth at the moment anyway, so you have to teleport him back to Scotland for the draw.
Yeah, he'd have a hard job.
Sorry, just to interrupt on Rod Stewart. Apparently, he was posting updates about the Celtic game while he was performing on stage in Perth. Brilliant. He was like,
my dad was there, and he can confirm that definitely happened.
Yeah, it sounds about right for Rod. Look, I think I said this previous rounds. I couldn't care less who we got. I think it's important to note, based on what's coming out of feeds out of Twitter, that more importantly, the other lot want us in the semi-final, because that means they won't have to deal with losing to us for a treble in the final. So that kind of tells you where we've got them at the moment. We've absolutely broken them over the last few weeks. Look, I couldn't care less whether we beat them in the semi-final or we beat them in the final, or that they managed to collapse and they're out in the semis and we've got a free pass. To be honest, if we play like we've been playing the last few weeks, especially like we did on Saturday, doesn't matter who we come up against, whether it's them or a team from 1 or 2 leagues below, we shouldn't be losing to anyone in the current form. The stats that we've pulled out in terms of the amount of wins, it's relentless. And I can't, I think I took a bit of heat from some of this panel, including Tommy, who's not on tonight, for being a bit too almost cocksure in terms of where we're going with the league. If we play where we play, we should be taking everything home.
Yeah, and look, it seems like the only thing, no disrespect, but to say there's 3 lower league teams in there and then there's Sevco, the only thing preventing that Celtic Sevco final at the moment is the luck of the draw, right? Anthony, what do you want?
Oh, I want to beat them in the final. I want to win a treble with them there, standing there. Michael Beale making excuses for himself after another loss in a cup final. So I definitely want them in the final. The fact that Twitter's awash with, we want to play them in the semis because I can't stand seeing them win the final. That's where they're at the moment. They're having a harsh realization. They built it up bigger than Ben Hur the last few weeks. Now they're starting to realize, hang on a minute. They played Wraith Rovers the other night, and what was it? It was a set piece, an own goal, and a late one. And that's against Wraith Rovers. They're scraping by. They're big pretenders. So, big stage, cup final, gub them. But yeah, as Paul says, I don't really care. But if that was the narrative, and we won a treble and we beat them twice in 2 cup finals, that would just be magnificent. I
think we can all agree that would be perfect. I guess I was being a bit more flippant, saying we'll beat whoever we come up against in current form.
I agree.
Yeah. If I agree with you, Anthony, if we could perfectly pitch it, beating them 5-0 to win the treble, something like that, that would go down nicely. I wouldn't argue with that.
So I'm on
my birthday list for.
Your birthday list. I'm going to make a case for wanting them in the semis, okay? And the reason I say that is because I want their season to be over on the 30th of April if we beat them in the semis. And then they just have to spend the next 5 weeks watching us celebrate as we proceed towards the league title and the cup final on the 3rd of June. I just want them to spend 5 weeks suffering, watching us celebrate. Because like they'll do the thing where if they've got the cup final, they'll have the whole media spin. But if they're out the cup and we're just in a
But
process
Sean,
of winning,
that's even better because you see them getting their hopes up. And then they get dashed, and it's a hope it kills them every time. So I get where you're coming from, but at the same time, like I love the fact that they think that that build it up, and then it all just comes crashing down. And Twitter's just a wonderful place to be for about 7 days afterwards. So, but we'll see. Time will tell. We'll see what happens. But my money is probably on Celtic Rangers meeting in the final because I think the broadcasters will probably. Definitely be wanting that to be the outcome, but we'll see.
It's what's the odds? I can't remember now. This chances of it's like 1 in 4, something like that. I can't 1 in 3, but it's probably going to happen. Go on yourself. I'd prefer them in the semis. The Masons won't allow Celtic and Rangers in the semi. When they pull the draw, we'll be right. Yeah, it's easy enough. You just put the ball in the freezer. The person that's putting their hand in can feel what the cold one is and just be selective. It's how we ended up with Hearts away in the quarters. Mahesh is actually going against what you guys are saying and saying that Rangers have actually, quote unquote, Rangers have actually got better, just over 2 in net XG for Celtic, and Rangers just over 1.5 per game. So close enough for variance in VAR to have an impact, implying in a one-off game. So he's a little more try to be more rational and statistic about it and saying we should be wary of a one-off game against them in the cup whenever that takes place, which is fair. Now, as this is the weekend review, there wasn't any league games, but there is something to talk about. I'd quite like to finish. I've got a treat for the end, and Jared's probably going to kill me for this, but I've ripped that Jota on the Wing song to play us out at the end. Rather than our usual tune. Sorry, Jared. Apologies in advance. I figured if we're infringing copyright, we might as well do it at the end when you can cut it off. So before we get to that, I just want to get you guys' takes on what is quite a big story over in the Northern Hemisphere, which is this Gary Lineker shenanigans around about Match of the Day. So we don't really get Match of the Day here, but it's been quite an interesting story to watch develop with Gary Lineker doing his tweet, BBC doing their thing, and then pretty much everyone coming out in support of Gary Lineker. The only way it impacts me so far is that the people who upload the BBC podcast onto wherever they upload it to are presumably on strike as well, because there's not been a BBC podcast released since the whole thing kicked off. So, Paul, Gary Lineker, is he the people's hero, or is this just all a load of nonsense?
He's a people's hero, isn't he? Like,
is it?
It's about time somebody I know we're not supposed to get too political on here, but the UK government is an absolute disgrace. They've managed to import the worst policies that Australia's ever come up with in terms of the Stop the Boat campaign. Australia's finally actually getting rid of it, and that Tory government have decided they're going to try and import it. It's absolutely scandalous. And to be honest, in terms of suggesting that it's not, we can get into the nitty-gritty of, is he allowed to be impartial or not because he's a sports presenter and not a news presenter?
That's more what I was pushing at. Let's not comment too much on the government. Just what's Gary Lineker's role here.
No, let's be honest. And I think the thing is, you take impartiality out of it because it's basic human rights. Where does it? And I've seen some tweets from Craig Foster down here, and he's massively on the support of human rights, and I think he's absolutely right. It's like there's some certain things that you're not impartial on or not. They're just common decency or not. So first things first, Lineker's absolutely spot on. The other thing is it's not, to me, it's not a thing that you need to be impartial on or not. It's either you're on the side of decency or you're not, and he is. The fact that he's had the amount of support come out in his favour proves that. I don't know if anyone else is across this, given how recent it happened. He's back. They've come to an agreement, and he's going to be back. There's no climb down, as far as I can gather. The BBC have cobbled together some sort of planned review of social media rules for anyone that's linked to them, whether they're a contractor and a freelancer, as Lineker is, or a permanent member of staff. But essentially, the BBC have made an absolute foul up here. They've been forced into an embarrassing climb down. By all accounts, it was an absolute shambles. Match of the day, no music, no presenter, no commentary, finished in 20 minutes. it's a classic show that any of us who have ever spent any time in the UK would remember being a key part of Saturday night. If if you're going to be staying in, you're watching the football highlights, and all of that comes with the punditry and the discussions and all of that. So they've massively shot themselves in the foot. And I'm delighted that once again football's holding politicians to account. We had Rashford previously making the government do U-turns, and now we've got Lineker putting them under the spotlight. So yeah, got on my soapbox a little bit about that, but I think he's absolutely right, and the climb down shows it.
Anthony, is it in terms of match of the day, it's probably just the work experience kid chucking some stuff together in Adobe Suite was what they came out with, but you can actually see how this somewhat relates to our kind of contentious issues that we have with the Green Brigade, and whether football should be getting involved in areas outside of the sporting realm. Should football be more used as a force for positive change in society? Just quickly, Anthony, because we are running out of time.
To take your point, yes. Broadly, yes, I agree. I think it can be a force for good. Just to back to Paul's point above, I agree with absolutely everything Paul just said there. And the one thing I would say is, if Gary Lineker had come out and tweeted support for the UK government's policy on stopping the boats, do you think the head of the BBC would have been hauling him into his office and standing him down? I think not. So that says all you need to know. The head of the BBC giving Boris Johnson an $800,000 loan and stuff like that. So I think it's all resolved itself. The BBC have come out looking much the worse for it. But yeah, I think football can be a force for good. There's always talk of sports washing and things like that, with the Saudis buying football teams and the horrible human rights issues and the Qatar World Cup and things like that. But I think deep down, most people can sort of agree that we can get behind positive projects, and I think this was a good outcome in this instance. So hopefully more to come.
So it's not even on the run sheet, but just when you mentioned that, I remembered something that's happened in the last week, and I'm just going to bring it up without any discussion, was that down here in Australia and New Zealand, the women's federations, or the women's, I'm not sure which level, have came out and said to FIFA, look, we are not, because we're having the World Cup here in a couple of months, and they came out and said, we are not happy that you are accepting Saudi tourist sponsorship for this tournament. So that's might actually be a bit of a tricky issue that's coming up down the line. When you mentioned sports washing there, it reminded me of that. So because it's getting to the end, I'm not going to open up conversation on that one, just something to highlight for anyone that's in a different hemisphere and might not be aware of that issue that's about to come to a head. So let's finish up with some positivity. And I don't know if anyone's seen it recently, but there was a picture came out this week of Postecoglou way back in his young day, looking a lot like one of our Portuguese winger, Jota. Did either of you see the picture with the mustache and the mullet kind of perm going on?
I did.
He's definitely. I think Jota's emulating the boss at the moment, because he's definitely got the mullet, and the mullet looking rather resplendent at the moment. So yeah.
Yeah. So the question is Jota's recent resurgence in form, the last 2 or 3 games, down to the viral song that's going around TikTok and Twitter at the moment? Paul, is that the reason?
I would doubt it, but but there's been some good creativity from various parties. The original covers a pretty awesome effort. And then I noticed, obviously, there's been a bit of a bandwagon jumping by Big Bems is involved, and then a few others chipping in. So yeah, they've managed to put something pretty good together. And I reckon if they released it, the Celtic support would be all over it. So yeah.
They're talking about it apparently. What's her name? Ellie something.
Dixon, is it? Ellie Dixon.
That sounds right, Ellie Dixon. Yeah, they're talking about how they can monetize this at the moment. Anthony, is that a tune? You jamming on it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's we're saying in the group chat, like, we have the talented supporters, because the other side of Glasgow can't even get a tifo right. So meanwhile we're talking about record deals. So no, definitely. So I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying just it's just the buzz around this team at the moment. They're a joy to watch, and we're reveling in it. We're having a great time, and long may it continue.
Yeah, and basically, I don't know how they keep coming up with these songs, but they have. So I'll just let us say our goodbyes and then I'll finish out by playing the song. Apologies if I'm infringing on any copyright. I hope not. And hopefully it's just promoting what is a really good and enjoyable song, and hopefully everyone enjoys listening to it here as well. So that's it for us this week. Please listen to our shows on Tuesday and Wednesday, and the Celtic game this weekend is Saturday, 10 p.m. for us against Hibs. Is that right?
I think so, yes. It's definitely against Hibs, but I think it's 10 o'clock, yeah.
Yeah. So enjoy the show. Enjoy the shows on Tuesday and Wednesday, and we'll speak to you next week. And hopefully we're reviewing 27th league win of the season. Hail, hail.
Hail, hail.
When you score, you make a Celtic sing. Jota on the wing, Jota on the wing. Every time you're on the ball, we know it's gonna be a goal. A superstar from Portugal. When you score, you make a Celtic sing. Jota on the wing, Jota on the wing. Every time you're on the ball, we know it's gonna be a goal. A superstar from Portugal.
So the green and white on my chest, you know that I rap for the greatest. Us man, but I want from ages. So them man, I need to have patience. When they see the boys in green coming on the wing, take lots of Jota. We do it proper. 2-1 to the boys, they can't stop us. Jota on the wing.